A silent civilization sleeps beneath a canopy of trees. We are only now learning to see the monumental ruins hidden for centuries under dense forest canopies. This journey will completely reshape what you know about human history. You will discover 25 lost cities, from a forgotten metropolis deep in the Amazon to a jungle-clad pyramid older than the cultures we celebrate. How could entire societies vanish beneath the green? And what urgent messages do their stones hold for us today? What does it mean for a world to be so thoroughly forgotten? A single researcher stands on the forest floor, surrounded by a wall of green. To their eyes, there is only the chaotic tangle of vines, the towering trunks, and the dense undergrowth. But high above, a specialized aircraft sends down pulses of light, and the data it collects tells a completely different story. On a screen, the ghostly outline of a perfect rectangle emerges from the noise, the spectral footprint of a plaza built 1,000 years ago. This is the fundamental enigma of the canopy. Forests are far more than just collections of trees. They are the most effective guardians of lost time our planet has ever devised. They do not merely grow over history, they actively collaborate in its concealment. Consider the simple act of a leaf falling. Season after season, century after century, a soft, persistent rain of organic matter builds up on the ground. This leaf litter decomposes slowly but relentlessly, transforming into rich, dark soil. What was once a cobblestone street or a ceremonial platform is gradually buried under feet of earth, a process that can complete itself within a few human lifetimes. The forest floor rises, swallowing whole cities from below. Meanwhile, the trees themselves become agents of both preservation and destruction. Their searching roots seek out moisture, slipping between the carefully fitted stones of a wall. They hold the masonry together, preventing total collapse, yet over generations they also slowly, inexorably push the stones apart. The structure is both embraced and dismantled. The forest had not erased this city, it had simply absorbed it, turning streets into footpaths and palaces into indistinguishable hills. The revelations did not stop there. The scans showed that Angkor itself was merely the dense, ceremonial core of a sprawling metropolis. Extending for dozens of miles in every direction were the ghosts of suburbs, industrial districts, and intricate water management systems. Canals, roads, and small temple complexes formed a vast urban web that once supported a population researchers now believe numbered close to 1 million people. This was not a city in the jungle, it was a jungle woven into the fabric of a city. Dr. Damien Evans, who led this groundbreaking survey, has noted how this completely rewrites our understanding of the empire's scale and sophistication. The Khmer were not just master architects of stone, but unparalleled landscape engineers, sculpting an entire region to support one of the pre-industrial world's largest settlements. Their greatest monument was not a single temple, but the sustainable, interconnected metropolis they built around it. Angkor Wat, in all its glory, was just the glittering centerpiece in a crown of earth and water that the forest patiently reclaimed. This discovery forces a humbling realization. We have been admiring the jewel while missing the entire treasure chest. It proves that our grandest surviving structures are often clues, pointing toward a lost world of everyday life, innovation, and complexity that faded back into the earth. If a civilization as celebrated as the Khmer could hide such monumental truths in plain sight, what other worlds are still waiting quietly beneath the trees? But the story of Angkor is not unique. It is a pattern repeated across the globe. In the dense, almost impenetrable Mosquitia rainforest of Honduras, another legend whispered for centuries. Local tales and indigenous stories spoke of a Ciudad Blanca, a white city, a place of immense stone structures and spiritual power hidden deep within the green. Some called it the city of the monkey god. For generations, it was dismissed as mere folklore, a phantom born from the shadows of the jungle. Then, in the 1940s, an American explorer named Theodore Maud returned from an expedition with a sensational claim. He said he had found it. He described monumental ruins, elaborate carvings, and even brought back artifacts, claiming the site was a ceremonial center for a vanished people who worshipped a deity in the form of a giant simian. But consumed by a desire to protect the location, he took its precise coordinates to his grave, and the white city faded once more into the realm of myth. The jungle guarded its secret for another 70 years. Modern science, however, had developed new ways of listening. In the 2000s, a bold, multidisciplinary team decided to hunt for the truth. Instead of hacking through miles of wilderness on foot, they began their search from the sky, using airborne LiDAR to scan vast swaths of the Musquisha. The technology performed its now familiar magic, digitally peeling back the leafy canopy to reveal the shape of the land below. And there, in the data, was the undeniable signature of human hands. The scans revealed not just a few scattered ruins, but an extensive, organized settlement. Researchers identified large plazas, terraced earthworks, irrigation channels, and the distinct angular mound of a possible pyramid. They had found not one white city, but evidence of multiple lost settlements in a region they came to call the Lost City of the Jaguar. A ground expedition confirmed the staggering reality. Emerging from the thick undergrowth, archaeologists stood in a clearing that was not natural. They documented stone sculptures of human and animal figures, ceremonial vessels, and finely worked stone seats. These were not the crude remnants of a simple tribe, but the artifacts of a sophisticated, centralized society that had flourished, completely unknown to the history books, between roughly 1000 and 1400 AD. This culture had built monumental architecture, practiced complex rituals, and managed their rainforest environment with skill, all before vanishing so completely that only the jungle remembered. The discovery is a powerful testament to human resilience and innovation in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. It also serves as a profound reminder. Some of humanity's most significant chapters are not written on parchment or carved in famous stone, but are sleeping quietly in the planet's last untouched wildernesses, waiting for the right moment to be read again. If such a vibrant civilization could be utterly lost and then found in the 21st century, what other stories are still hidden patiently beneath the leaves? The discovery in Honduras revealed that even the most persistent legends can be true. Yet across the Pacific Ocean, there exists a ruin so visually impossible that its very existence challenges our understanding of ancient engineering. Imagine a city rising directly from a coral reef, a labyrinth of silent canals and colossal stone walls slowly being strangled by the roots of mangrove forests. This is not a scene from fantasy, it is the stark reality of Madol. Early European explorers stumbling upon this place in the 19th century could scarcely believe their eyes. They saw a network of over 90 artificial islets, separated by tidal canals and constructed from millions of basalt logs, and they gave it a name that reflected their awe, the Venice of the Pacific. The name, however, does little justice to the sheer improbability of the site. Madol was built not on solid ground, but atop a living coral reef fringing the island of Pohnpei. The builders, belonging to the Sordelor dynasty, faced a problem with no obvious precedent. They needed a foundation, and they found it in the most daunting way imaginable. Their primary construction material was columnar basalt, a volcanic rock that naturally forms into heavy, geometric logs. These colossal stones, some weighing many tons, were quarried from the opposite side of the island. The mystery of how they were moved across miles of jungle and open water remains one of the great puzzles of Pacific archaeology. Some theories suggest they were floated on rafts during high tide, a delicate and perilous operation. Others propose they were transported on a system of log rollers and ropes, an undertaking requiring the coordinated labor of generations. However they achieved it, the result was a staggering feat of logistics. The builders stacked these basalt logs crisscross, like gigantic logs of lumber, to form walls up to 25 feet high, creating artificial platforms that became the foundations for temples, tombs, and royal residences. This was the ceremonial and political heart of the Sordelor dynasty, a powerful line of rulers who centralized authority over Pohnpei for centuries. From these watery precincts they commanded their island realm. Yet, like so many centers of power, Nan Madol's dominance did not last forever. Around the 17th century, the city was abandoned. The reasons are still debated by researchers. Some point to evidence of a dramatic shift in social structure, a popular uprising against the increasingly rigid Sordelor rule. Others suggest environmental pressures may have played a role, perhaps changes in sea level or the overexploitation of local resources making the complex difficult to sustain. What is clear is that the people left and the vibrant city fell silent. Then the forest began its patient reclamation. The warm, wet environment provided the perfect cradle for mangrove seeds to take root in the stonework. Over centuries, these tenacious trees have grown directly from the walls and canals, their snaking roots both binding the ancient masonry together and slowly, inevitably prying it apart. This encroaching jungle has acted as a formidable barrier to archaeologists, protecting Nan Madol's deepest secrets but also preserving its profound mystery. The city stands as a monumental dialogue between human ambition and natural force. It is a testament to what a society can achieve when it directs all its will toward a single, seemingly impossible goal, and a sobering reminder that even the greatest stoneworks are temporary guests in the living world. The mangrove roots gripping the basalt are not merely destroying history, they are becoming part of its story, weaving a new chapter of green over the old one of stone. The journey to find such lost cities is never easy, and reaching El Mirador is a testament to that truth. It demands a multi-day trek through the dense, humid embrace of the Patane rainforest, a grueling pilgrimage on foot or by mule that few ever undertake. This isolation is precisely what has guarded its secrets for so long. Emerging into the clearing feels like stepping backward through 1,000 years of time. Here, the classic Maya cities we know so well, like the towering temples of Tikal, were not yet born. El Mirador is their ancient ancestor, a thriving metropolis that reached its peak and entered a mysterious decline centuries before those later centers ever rose to prominence. This is the true cradle of Maya civilization, a place where the very idea of a Maya kingdom was first forged in stone and stucco. The scale is almost incomprehensible. Dominating the site is the colossal Ladanta Pyramid. From the forest floor, it appears as a massive, tree-clad mountain. But archaeological surveys reveal its true nature, a man-made titan constructed in a series of immense platforms. By total volume, Ladanta is one of the largest pyramids ever built by any ancient society, rivaling even the great monuments of Egypt. Yet most of it remains swallowed by the jungle, a hidden giant whose full form we have still not completely uncovered. The society that built this was not the later, well-documented classic Maya, but the pre-classic Maya, a people of profound innovation. They were not just building pyramids, they were inventing the blueprint for a civilization. Researchers have uncovered evidence of sophisticated water management systems, including reservoirs and canals, that allowed them to thrive in the rainforest. Their agricultural practices were advanced, likely involving the cultivation of forest gardens and early forms of irrigation that sustained a large urban population. This was a society transitioning from scattered villages into one of the America's first true states, with centralized authority, complex trade networks, and a distinct artistic and religious identity. And here, the forest canopy has acted as a perfect, if unintended, conservator. At other, more exposed sites, the vibrant art of the Maya has been worn away by centuries of sun and rain. But at El Mirador, the dense green blanket has preserved something extraordinary. Delicate stucco friezes and vivid murals depicting mythological scenes and early deities have survived in sheltered places. These are not just decorations, they are the earliest chapters of a sacred story, offering a unique window into the spiritual world at the very dawn of Maya culture. The images show us the gods they worshipped and the myths they believed in, frozen in time beneath a protective roof of leaves. To stand before La Danta is to confront a profound paradox. This represents one of humanity's earliest and most ambitious experiments in urban living, a triumph of collective will. Yet its greatest legacy was not its own longevity, but the cultural spark it passed on. The ideas of kingship, architecture, and cosmology perfected here would travel through the rainforest, inspiring the classic Maya cities that followed. El Mirador was the first great flame, and the forest that now reclaims it ensured that its light was not completely lost, but patiently preserved for a future age to rediscover. For centuries, the Amazon was a blank space on the map of human history. The story told to us was one of a pristine, untouched wilderness, a green desert where only small, nomadic tribes could survive. That story was not just incomplete, it was fundamentally wrong. The proof was hidden in the very soil, and it was first noticed not by archaeologists but by farmers. In the Brazilian state of Acre, people clearing land for crops kept stumbling upon something strange. Instead of the expected chaos of the jungle floor, they found the earth arranged in precise, geometric shapes. There were perfect circles, squares, and octagons outlined by deep ditches and tall earthen banks. These were not natural formations. They were the overgrown footprints of something monumental, a vast, patterned landscape designed by human hands. This was the first clue that the Amazon had once been home to something far grander than anyone had dared to imagine. These earthworks, now numbering in the hundreds, are just the visible hint of a lost world. Deeper in the Xingu region, research led by anthropologists like Dr. Michael Heckenberger has unveiled the full picture. Working with indigenous communities whose oral histories held fragments of the past, and using technology to peer beneath the canopy, his team mapped the Kuhakugu complex. What they found rewrites the narrative entirely. This was not a scattering of simple villages. It was a networked constellation of settlements, a true garden city. Wide, straight roads connected fortified towns, each centered on large, circular plazas. These roads were not mere paths, but sophisticated causeways, elevated above the seasonal floods that define the Amazon basin. Canals and bridges completed a transportation grid that would have buzzed with activity. The most revolutionary discovery, however, lies in the dirt itself. The natural soil of the Amazon, known as oxisol, is famously poor in nutrients, quickly exhausted by farming. But scattered throughout the forest are patches of incredibly rich, dark earth called Terra Preta, or black earth. This is not a natural resource, it is an ancient human invention, a biochar created centuries ago by slowly burning organic waste in a low-oxygen environment. This process created a super soil, teeming with microorganisms and capable of retaining fertility for incredible lengths of time. The people of Kuhakugu and other sites did not just live in the Amazon, they actively engineered it. They built up this fertile soil to create productive garden plots, orchards, and managed forest groves. They practiced a form of resource management that was both intensive and sustainable, supporting settled populations that researchers now believe could have numbered in the tens of thousands, perhaps even more. Dr. Heckenberger has described this as a landscape of monuments, but the monuments were not pyramids of stone. They were the roads, the plazas, the fish weirs in the rivers, and the enriched earth itself. This was a civilization that expressed its power and ingenuity through a harmonious, large-scale manipulation of the living environment. Their legacy is not a skyline of temples, but a forest that still bears the shape of their care. The garden cities show us a different model of complexity, one built on an intimate knowledge of ecology rather than the stockpiling of stone. They force a humbling reevaluation, proving that what we once saw as an empty wilderness was, in fact, a carefully managed, populous, and profoundly sophisticated world. The forest did not hide these cities because they were insignificant. It hid them because they were made of the same stuff as the forest, a living, breathing partnership between people and place that faded from view when the partnership ended. 60-foot walls of pale limestone rise from a blanket of cloud and moss, a fortress city suspended between earth and sky. This is Kuelap, the monumental stronghold of the Chachapoya people, often called the Machu Picchu of the north, yet its story is entirely its own. Built on a remote ridge in the Peruvian Andes, surrounded by the perpetual damp of a cloud forest, Kuelap feels less like a discovered ruin and more like a slumbering giant slowly awakening from a long, green dream. The scale is immediately defensive, a statement of power and protection. The outer walls tower over the landscape, constructed from millions of fitted stones without mortar, a technique that allowed the structure to breathe and flex with the humid mountain environment. To enter, one must pass through a narrow, funnel-shaped corridor that could be easily defended, a clear message to any who approached. But within these formidable defenses lay a city of surprising grace and mystery. Unlike the angular stonework of the Inca, Kuelap is a city of curves and circles. Archaeologists have documented over 400 circular stone foundations, the remains of dwellings with conical thatched roofs that once housed several thousand people. These round homes, clustered in neighborhoods across the massive complex, suggest a distinct cultural identity, a society that saw itself in the shape of the rolling hills and the cyclical patterns of their mist-shrouded world. The Chachapoya, whose name is often translated as the people of the clouds, were master builders who used their environment as both a canvas and a shield. The cloud forest provided constant moisture, which preserved organic materials like wood, textiles, and plant remains that would have crumbled to dust in a drier climate. This humidity also encouraged a relentless growth of moss, orchids, and bromeliads, which quickly draped the stonework in a living tapestry, camouflaging the city from distant view and from historical memory for centuries. Yet the most haunting aspects of Chachapoya culture are found not within the walls, but clinging to the cliffs that surround them. Perched on sheer rock faces high above the Utcubamba River are their enigmatic sarcophagi known as Purin matches. These are anthropomorphic burial pods shaped like human figures and made of clay and straw, set into impossibly high niches. Reaching them would have required extraordinary effort and courage, a final act of reverence to place loved ones closer to the condors and the sky. These silent sentinels speak to a spiritual world, you deeply connected to the vertical landscape, a belief that the boundary between earth and heaven was a sacred space to be honored. This formidable, isolated kingdom could not remain independent forever. By the late 15th century, the expanding Inca Empire set its sights on the Chachapoya lands. Historical accounts and archaeological evidence suggest a period of fierce resistance. Kuelap, with its immense walls and strategic position, likely became a final redoubt. Research indicates the Incas eventually prevailed, but integrating the proud Chachapoya people was a constant struggle. They rebelled repeatedly, even siding with the Spanish conquistadors decades later in hopes of overthrowing their Inca rulers, a decision that ultimately led to their tragic dissolution as a distinct culture. The cloud forest that had long protected Kuelap then conspired to hide it. As the population dwindled and the site was abandoned, the vegetation moved in with startling speed. Within a few generations, the Great Walls were just another mossy ridgeline, the circular homes mere hummocks in the fog. It was not rediscovered by the outside world until 1843, and even then, its remote, overgrown location kept it in obscurity while Machu Picchu captured the global imagination. Kuelap's legacy is one of resilient independence. It tells the story of a people who carved a sophisticated civilization into one of the most challenging environments on the continent, using the forest itself as an element of their architecture and defense. Their story, etched in circular stones and cliffside tombs, is a powerful reminder that the canopy hides not just cities, but entire nations who defined strength and spirituality on their own terms, leaving behind a fortress that feels less like a ruin and more like a monument to a will that the jungle itself could not erase. The iconic fortress of Sigiriya, that lone rock rising from the Sri Lankan plains, has long captivated the world. Its frescoes and lion gate staircase tell a story of royal ambition and retreat. But the rock was never meant to stand alone. It was the dazzling centerpiece in a vast, meticulously planned landscape that the surrounding jungle has faithfully guarded for centuries. Recent archaeological work, combining ground surveys with aerial imaging, has pulled back the green curtain to reveal a staggering truth. Sigiriya was not an isolated palace, but the administrative and spiritual heart of a sprawling, engineered hinterland designed to thrive in a challenging dry zone. What researchers found radiating out from the rock was a masterpiece of ancient hydro-engineering. The forest floor, once seen as untamed wilderness, was secretly patterned with an intricate network of reservoirs, interconnected canals, and sophisticated water gardens. These features stretched for miles in every direction, a testament to a civilization that viewed water not as a threat to be drained, but as a sacred resource to be meticulously managed, stored, and celebrated. This hydraulic grid did more than just supply the royal court on the rock. It supported a substantial population of monks, artisans, and farmers living in satellite settlements, transforming a seasonally arid region into a lush, productive paradise. The system was designed with profound intelligence. Large reservoirs called tanks captured monsoon rains. A web of underground channels and surface canals then distributed this water with gravity-fed precision to smaller tanks, to irrigated fields, and into the famous water gardens at Sigiriya's base, where pools, fountains, and cooling runs created an environment of serene beauty. This was engineering in service of both survival and spirituality. The forest canopy played a crucial, unintended role in preserving this ancient blueprint. By preventing large-scale modern plowing and development, the dense growth kept these subtle earthworks and channels largely intact. Where open land might have been repurposed or erased, the jungle acted as a protective layer, allowing archaeologists to read the original design on the land itself. Understanding this hinterland is the key to unlocking the true genius of Sri Lanka's early kingdoms, like Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa. Sigiriya's sophisticated system was not an anomaly, but a brilliant example of a wider cultural mastery. These societies were built on a deep philosophy of water stewardship, creating a sustainable, cascading system that supported dense populations and grand cities for over 1,000 years. Their greatest monuments were not just temples and palaces, but the vast, serene reservoirs that mirrored the sky, and the gentle canals that gave life to the land. The forest, by hiding these features, ultimately preserved a powerful lesson. It saved for us a complete model of how to live in balance with a delicate environment, a blueprint where every drop of water was honored, channeled, and given purpose. The lonely rock of Sigiriya now stands reconnected to its true context, not as a solitary wonder, but as the proud central node in a lost kingdom of water and wisdom, patiently mapped out in the earth beneath the trees. Deep in the West African rainforest, where the air is thick and the light falls in green fragments, the earth holds a secret written in stone. Local communities have known of these places for generations, speaking of them with a mix of reverence and quiet mystery. They are the ancient stone circles, silent gatherings of laterite pillars that rise from the forest floor in places like Sierra Leone's Gola forest and across the border in Liberia. For centuries, oral traditions passed down stories about their origin, some speaking of them as places where great chiefs of old were laid to rest, others whispering that they were the work of a powerful, forgotten people. These were not just landmarks, they were chapters in a living history, protected by the dense canopy that made them difficult for outsiders to find and even harder to understand. Modern archaeology has begun to listen to those old stories, and in doing so has confirmed a profound truth. Through careful survey and limited excavation, researchers have determined these circles are memorial sites, ancient resting places constructed over 1,000 years ago. The circles are not random. They are meticulously arranged with large, shaped stone pillars, some standing over 8 feet tall, marking the perimeter. Within these circles, archaeologists have found evidence of ceremonial practices, with artifacts and the placement of stones suggesting these were sacred spaces for honoring individuals of great importance. The forest here has played a dual role. The relentless humidity and thick root systems have made large-scale, traditional excavation extremely challenging, preserving the sites largely intact but also keeping their full stories locked away. This very inaccessibility, however, is what saved them from disturbance, leaving them as one of the most pristine archaeological records in the region. The identity of the builders remains one of the great puzzles. The prevailing theory among scholars connects the circles to the early man-speaking peoples, whose cultural and linguistic influence spread across West Africa. The sophistication of the stonework, requiring both communal labor and skilled craftsmanship, points to a society with social hierarchy and complex spiritual beliefs. These were not temporary camps but permanent markers of legacy, indicating settled communities who invested immense effort to memorialize their history in the landscape. Each circle is a testament to a social structure that valued remembrance and lineage long before external contact. Understanding these sites is crucial for piecing together a narrative that written history often overlooked. They stand as monumental proof of sophisticated, organized societies in pre-colonial West Africa, whose achievements were recorded not on paper, but in enduring stone beneath the forest roof. The canopy, by limiting modern development and shielding the circles from easy view, became their greatest protector. It preserved a direct link to a past that challenges simplistic notions of Africa's history, reminding us that some of the most important stories are not found in libraries, but are waiting, patient and upright, in the green heart of the world. In 1972, a group of local treasure hunters were following a rumor deep into the Colombian jungle. They were lured by stories of a place the indigenous Kogi people called Tayuna, a sacred city hidden on the remote slopes of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. What they stumbled upon, however, was far more than a few golden artifacts. They found a monumental staircase, hundreds of moss-covered steps ascending through the mist into the clouds. They had accidentally rediscovered Ciudad Perdida, the lost city, a sprawling urban complex built by the Terra civilization. This discovery sent a shockwave through archaeology, for this city was not a contemporary of the famous Inca sites. Radiocarbon dating would later reveal that its core was constructed around 800 AD, making it approximately 650 years older than Machu Picchu. The treasure hunters, in their search for quick wealth, had instead uncovered one of the America's greatest and most ancient architectural secrets. Reaching this secret today remains a profound challenge, a pilgrimage that mirrors the isolation that protected it. There are no roads. The only access is a grueling multi-day trek through some of the planet's most biodiverse and steep terrain. Hikers ford rushing rivers, climb slippery paths, and navigate dense, humid forest where the air itself feels alive. This journey is a necessary decompression, a slow stripping away of the modern world that makes the final arrival all the more powerful. Emerging into the cleared terraces of Ciudad Perdida feels like stepping into a different dimension. The city is a masterpiece of mountainous engineering, a series of over 150 circular stone terraces carved into the jungle-clad slopes. These terraces functioned as the foundations for large, conical thatched houses, arranged around central plazas and connected by a network of stone-paved paths and staircases. The entire settlement is a cascading architectural wonder, designed to manage the heavy rainfall and maximize livable space on impossibly steep ground. The forest here is not a passive observer, it is an active participant in the city's atmosphere. A perpetual mist clings to the mountainside, feeding a lush blanket of moss, ferns, and orchids that drape every stone. Tree roots snake over stairways and curl around terrace walls, performing their now familiar dual role of both stabilizing and slowly reclaiming the masonry. This creates a scene of haunting beauty, a perfect fusion of human intention and natural reclamation where the boundary between built environment and wild rainforest is beautifully blurred. This harmonious integration speaks to the Tarona's deep understanding of their world. They were not fighting the mountain, they were partnering with it. Their agricultural system was a marvel of adaptation. On these precipitous slopes, they built sophisticated irrigation channels and created terraced fields for growing maize, beans, and fruit trees, developing a sustainable mountain agriculture that supported a population of several thousand people at the city's height. Then, centuries before Spanish conquistadors ever set foot on the continent, this thriving city was abandoned. The reasons are not tied to invasion, but likely to a more insidious force. Researchers examining the timeline note that the decline of Ciudad Perdida and other Tarona centers coincides with periods of introduced epidemic illness brought by early European contact along the coast. While the Spanish never fought their way into this remote citadel, the pathogens they carried did, traveling along indigenous trade routes ahead of them. Faced with catastrophic loss, the surviving population may have gradually withdrawn from their grand stone city, consolidating in smaller, more defensible villages higher in the mountains. The city was not conquered, it was relinquished, but it was never truly forgotten. While it faded from outside knowledge, the memory of Tayuna was kept alive for centuries in the oral histories of the indigenous Kogi and Ahuaco peoples, descendants of the Tarona. They always knew it was there, a sacred place of origin to be protected and revered from a distance. This continuity of memory is perhaps the most powerful part of the story. The treasure hunters of the 1970s found stones, but the indigenous communities had always held the meaning. Today, the preservation of Ciudad Perdida is managed with their involvement, a slow reconciliation between archaeological curiosity and ancestral wisdom. The city stands as a silent teacher, showing us a society that achieved monumental harmony with a fierce landscape, and whose ultimate lesson is about resilience, memory, and the quiet, enduring power of a story passed down through the green, mist-shrouded generations. The silence within a jungle cave is a different kind of quiet. It is not an absence of sound, but a profound absorption, where the drip of water from a stalactite echoes like a heartbeat. In the rainforests of Belize, the ancient Maya city of Lubonton rises in a series of elegant, terraced mounds. Its buildings are unique, constructed from precisely cut limestone blocks fitted together without any mortar, a testament to engineering skill. Yet the true heart of Maya's spiritual life here was not under the open sky, but deep within the earth itself. Beneath the forest floor, a labyrinth of caves snakes through the bedrock, and these were far more than mere geological features. They were considered sacred portals, the literal entrance to Xibalba, the Maya underworld, a realm of gods, ancestors, and potent spiritual forces. To understand the Maya, one must be willing to descend. One of the most breathtaking of these portals is known as Acton Tunashil Muknal, often called the Cave of the Stone Sepulchre. Reaching it requires a journey that feels like a ritual in itself. You wade through a river that flows directly into the mouth of the cave, the cool water rising to your chest as you pass from the world of light into the world of shadow. Inside, the cave opens into cathedral-like chambers adorned with spectacular formations. But the true marvels here are not made of stone. The constant, cool humidity and complete isolation of this environment have created a perfect time capsule. Where artifacts on the surface would have crumbled to dust centuries ago, here they remain almost as they were left. On ledges and in crevices, archaeologists have found pristine pottery vessels, some still sealed, containing offerings of food and drink meant for the gods. Fragile textiles and wooden objects have been preserved in startling detail. The cave's most poignant finds, however, are the crystallized remains of individuals, their bones now covered in a delicate, sparkling layer of calcite deposited over 1,000 years by the mineral-rich water dripping from the ceiling. Researchers approach these sites with immense reverence, understanding they are in a sacred space. The analysis suggests these were not victims of conflict, but participants in the most profound rituals, acts of communication with the other world intended to ensure cosmic balance, agricultural fertility, and the continuation of life for the community above. Expert insights help us comprehend the weight these spaces held. For the Maya, caves were not empty holes. They were the homes of deities like the rain god, Chok, and the fearsome lords of the underworld. They were also seen as the womb of the earth, a place of both death and regeneration. To enter a cave was to cross a threshold into a different layer of reality. The artifacts left behind, the shattered pottery, the carefully placed offerings, the evidence of ceremonial fires, are a direct archaeological record of this belief system in action. Each object is a sentence in a prayer we are only now learning to read. The forest canopy above plays a final, crucial role in this preservation. It acts as a guardian, its roots stabilizing the soft limestone karst landscape, and its thick vegetation masking the cave entrances from casual view. For centuries, it kept these subterranean temples hidden, protecting them from looting and disturbance. This natural protection has given us an unfiltered, almost intimate look into the spiritual mind of a civilization. We are not looking at art made for public display, but at the private, powerful transactions between a people and the cosmos they believed in. To stand in that silent, dripping darkness is to stand in the very chamber where faith was made tangible, a reminder that for the ancient Maya, the most important truths were often sought not in the sunlight, but in the sacred dark beneath the roots of the world. The stone towers of Great Zimbabwe stand as a solitary monument to power, but true power is never truly alone. In the surrounding sea of Miombo woodland, a dry forest of whispering trees and golden grass, lie the forgotten echoes of that greatness. Scattered for miles in every direction, the earth holds the foundations of a vast, interconnected world. These are the satellite settlements, the overgrown trading hubs like Komi and Danangom, whose silent granite walls complete the story of a southern African empire. To understand Great Zimbabwe, you must leave its central citadel and walk into the woods where the network truly comes to life. The architecture is a familiar signature. At these outposts, you find the same meticulous dry stone walling, the same elegant chevron and herringbone patterns decorating terraces and enclosures, all built without mortar from locally quarried granite. But here, the stonework is in an intimate, ongoing conversation with the forest. Massive tree roots curl over and under the walls, both anchoring them against time and slowly, patiently, weaving them back into the landscape. This relationship with the dry woodland was strategic. The region's climate, with its distinct wet and dry seasons, meant the forest was less a suffocating blanket and more a porous veil. It provided cover and resources without completely swallowing the structures. The very dryness that defined the Miombo acted as a natural preservative, preventing the rapid moss and mold growth that devours ruins in wetter jungles, leaving the clean lines of the stonework visible even as saplings grew between them. These were not mere villages. Sites like Komi, with its elaborate terraced complex on a hilltop, were administrative and commercial centers of high importance. Their strategic locations were not accidental. They controlled the vital arteries of trade that fueled the kingdom's wealth. From the interior, great caravans carried gold from rich mines, ivory from elephant herds, and copper for tools and ornament. These goods flowed along established paths through the woodland, taxed and protected by these outpost communities, on their way to the coast where they would enter a vast Indian Ocean trade network connecting Africa to Arabia, India, and beyond. In return, coveted imports like glass beads, Chinese celadon pottery, and Persian textiles flowed back inland. The forest canopy played a crucial dual role in this history. For centuries, it concealed the full extent of this network from colonial-era treasure hunters and early archaeologists who focused solely on the main site. This natural camouflage protected countless smaller ruins from systematic looting, preserving not just the stones, but the archaeological context, the broken pottery, the slag from metalworking, the evidence of daily life. That tells the real story. It hid the map of the kingdom, allowing the grand capital to be misinterpreted as an isolated mystery, rather than the beating heart of a commercial realm. When we finally piece together the evidence from these woodland sites, a far richer picture emerges. Great Zimbabwe was not a lone castle in the wilderness. It was the central node in a sophisticated, hierarchical state, a Shona civilization that managed territory, production, and long-distance trade for centuries. The satellite hubs were the gears in this machine, places where local chiefs administered, artisans worked, and traders negotiated, all under the symbolic and economic umbrella of the Great Stone City. The forest that now reclaims these places did not erase this network, it simply archived it. Walking among the tree-shaded terraces of Danangom, you are not looking at a forgotten backwater. You are standing in a once bustling provincial capital, a vital link in a chain of influence that made southern Africa a major player in the medieval world. The canopy kept this truth quiet, saving it for a time when we could finally see that the greatest monuments are never just the points on the map, but the invisible lines of connection that once hummed between them. The story of a kingdom is often written in its rivalries. While Ticol's spires reached for the heavens in what is now Guatemala, another Maya superpower rose from a different part of the forest, a city whose ambition was etched in stone and whose memory was guarded by one of the most impenetrable jungles in Central America. This is Caracol, a name that means snail in Spanish, a humble title for a place of staggering power. To reach it today is to understand its strategic isolation. You travel deep into the heart of the Chiquibol Forest Reserve in Belize, a realm of howler monkeys and ceiba trees where the air is thick and the silence feels ancient. And then, through a break in the endless green, you see it. Kana, meaning sky palace, is not just a pyramid. It is a mountainous statement, a man-made acropolis that remains the tallest structure in all of Belize, even after more than 1,000 years. Standing at its base, looking up at its terraced heights still crowned with trees, you are not looking at a ruin. You are looking at the unyielding spine of a lost empire. This remoteness, this daunting blanket of forest, is precisely what saved Caracol's soul. While more accessible Maya sites suffered centuries of looting and casual destruction, the dense canopy of the Chiquibol acted as a formidable shield. The journey was too difficult, the jungle too overwhelming for treasure hunters to strip the city bare. This natural protection granted archaeologists an almost unprecedented gift, a royal city where tombs were found intact and where the stone records of its history, called stelae, still stood in their original plazas, their intricate carvings waiting to be read. These inscriptions are not mere decoration, they are the political archives of a warrior state. They tell of a dramatic rise to power, chronicling a pivotal conflict in the year 562 AD, when Caracol's forces defeated the mighty Tucol in a war that shifted the balance of power in the Maya world for over a century. The stelae speak of strategic alliances, royal successions, and complex rituals, allowing historians to reconstruct the biography of a kingdom with remarkable clarity. We know the names of its powerful rulers like Lord Water and Lord Smoke, who expanded its influence through both warfare and shrewd diplomacy. Yet Caracol's true strength was not forged solely on the battlefield. It was cultivated from the very jungle that now protects its stones. The city's astonishing growth, supporting a population that may have exceeded 100,000 people at its peak, was fueled by a revolutionary approach to its environment. The Maya of Caracol were master agricultural engineers. They transformed the seemingly hostile rainforest into a vast, productive garden. Archaeologists have mapped extensive terracing that covered the hillsides for miles around the city center. These were not simple steps. They were sophisticated soil retention systems that prevented erosion, captured precious rainwater, and created deep, fertile plots for growing maize, beans, squash, and fruit trees. They also practiced intensive forest gardening, managing groves of useful trees like the ramon or breadnut tree, which provided a reliable, nutritious staple food. This symbiotic relationship with the forest allowed Caracol to thrive, turning the perceived obstacle of the jungle into the foundation of its economic and political might. The city did not conquer its environment. It collaborated with it, weaving a sustainable support system that enabled its monumental ambitions. Caracol, therefore, stands as a profound lesson in legacy. The same dense, challenging forest that provided the resources for its golden age later became the guardian of its memory after its decline. When the city's political power eventually faded, a process shared by many Maya centers involving complex social and environmental pressures, the people left. The plazas fell silent, and the jungle moved back in with a patient, relentless grace. Vines climbed the steps of Connor, and tree roots gently cradled the carved stelae. What could have been a looted, empty shell was instead preserved in a state of suspended animation. The hostile wilderness became a protective custodian, ensuring that when the modern world finally fought its way back in, it would find not just stones but a story. Caracol exemplifies a beautiful paradox, a civilization that learned to harness the forest for life and was in turn preserved by that forest in death. The canopy did not erase this chapter of history. It simply closed the book gently, saving its most vital pages for a future that was finally ready to understand them. In 1925, a seasoned British explorer named Percy Fawcett vanished into the uncharted Amazon, convinced he was on the verge of a discovery that would rewrite history. He was searching for a lost civilization he called simply Z, a grand city of gold and stone he believed lay hidden in the green depths of the Mato Grosso. Fawcett, along with his son and a friend, walked into the jungle and were never seen again. Their disappearance spawned a century of speculation, countless rescue missions, and a legend that grew larger with each passing year. The quest for the lost city of Z became a symbol of obsession, a romantic and tragic mystery that many believed was pure fantasy. Yet Fawcett was not a fool. He was an experienced surveyor who had studied indigenous accounts and seen anomalous pottery and earthworks during earlier travels. His hypothesis was grounded in a kernel of truth, but the truth was far more complex and impressive than even he could have dreamed. The modern answer to his quest lies not in a single golden metropolis, but in a sprawling network of garden cities we now call the Kuhakugu complex. This is not a myth. It is a tangible archaeological reality, revealed through LiDAR surveys and ground research in the Upper Xingu region. The scans show not one, but over 20 major settlement clusters, each with its own central plaza, encircled by deep defensive ditches and connected by wide, straight roads that run for miles through the forest. These were not mere villages. They were organized, fortified towns dating from around 500 to 1600 AD, precisely the kind of pre-Columbian society Fawcett had imagined but could never reach. The forest itself was the ultimate guardian of this secret. The very impenetrability that consumed Fawcett also preserved the evidence he sought. The dense canopy and difficult terrain prevented large-scale exploration for decades, keeping the earthworks hidden from all but the local indigenous peoples whose oral histories spoke of the ancient town. The romantic myth of a lone explorer searching for a single lost city intersected with a far richer truth, a truth of interconnected communities who mastered their environment. They built moats not for treasure but for defense and water management. Their roads facilitated trade and social cohesion. Their legacy was not in glittering gold, but in the enduring, fertile Terra Preta soil they created to feed their population. Percy Fawcett was looking for a phantom of European legend, but the reality he glimpsed was a sophisticated, sustainable civilization that flourished in harmony with the Amazon. His tragic story and the stunning discovery that followed prove a powerful point. Sometimes the most captivating legends are not fiction at all, but simply history waiting patiently for the right moment to be found. Mount Mulanje is a world unto itself, a colossal granite fortress rising from the plains of southern Malawi. Its sheer cliffs and high plateaus, perpetually swathed in mist and cloaked in dense, mossy rainforest, have long been a place of legend. Local oral histories held quiet stories of ancient people who once lived in those lofty, cloud-wrapped heights, stories often passed off as mere folklore. But recent archaeological surveys have transformed those whispers into a tangible, hidden chapter of human history. Teams navigating the steep, slippery slopes and thick montane forest have begun to document the evidence stone by stone. They have mapped extensive systems of low stone walls, agricultural terraces carved into the mountainside, and the circular depressions of ancient pit structures, all nestled on plateaus over 6,000 feet above sea level. This was not a temporary camp, it was a settled, organized community living in the sky. The environment of Mount Mulanje created a perfect, secluded refuge. The persistent mist and cloud cover that shrouds the upper slopes fosters a unique ecosystem, a rainforest that thrives in cool, damp conditions. This isolation acted as a natural fortress, making the plateaus difficult to access and easy to defend, while the forest itself provided a sustainable lifeline. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of iron smelting furnaces, indicating these people were not just farmers, but skilled metalworkers who transformed local ore into tools and implements. The terraces speak of sophisticated hillside agriculture, likely cultivating resilient crops suited to the cooler climate. This combination of metallurgy and terrace farming points to a self-sufficient society that adapted ingeniously to their aerial home. The mist and forest canopy, which discouraged casual visitors for centuries, became the silent guardians of this story, preserving the subtle stone outlines and charcoal from ancient fires that would have vanished in a more exposed landscape. The identity of these mountain dwellers is a compelling puzzle, based on the timing suggested by initial findings which point to activity over 1,000 years ago. Researchers are piecing together possibilities. They may have been early Bantu-speaking farming communities who migrated into the region, drawn to the mountain's resources and defensive potential. Alternatively, They could represent later groups seeking sanctuary during periods of social upheaval or conflict in the lowlands, using the mountain's formidable geography as a shield. The mountain offered more than just protection. It provided a complete, if challenging, habitat. The forests supplied timber and medicinal plants, the streams offered fresh water, and the fertile volcanic soils on the terraces allowed for sustained harvest. This was a conscious choice to build a life in vertical seclusion, a testament to human resilience and strategic adaptation. Their story, written in terraces and hidden by cloud, reminds us that African history is not a single narrative on open plains, but a mosaic of diverse communities who carved out their existence in every conceivable landscape, leaving their quiet mark on places the world had forgotten to look. Away from the well-trodden paths of Angkor, the forest canopy in northern Cambodia guards a different kind of sacred space. Here, in the remote provinces like Pre-Columbian, the jungle has not just reclaimed the temples, it has become part of their architecture. At places like Angkor or Banteay Chh Ma, you do not find neatly cleared courtyards and restored towers. Instead, you walk into a living sculpture. Giant silk cotton and strangler fig trees have grown directly from the sandstone galleries, their serpentine roots flowing over walls and through windows, both holding the ancient masonry together and slowly, gracefully pulling it apart. This is a partnership between stone and root that has endured for centuries, creating scenes of breathtaking, melancholic beauty. These remote sites face a dual threat, a race against two relentless forces. The first is the forest itself. While the roots provide structural support, they are also agents of gentle destruction. As they grow thicker, they displace stones, crack lintels, and destabilize entire walls. The cycle of wet and dry seasons further stresses the sandstone, causing it to flake and crumble. The very environment that hid these temples is now slowly consuming them. The second, more urgent threat comes from human hands. The isolation that preserved these sites also makes them vulnerable. Organized looting networks seeking statues and carvings to sell on the illegal antiquities market have targeted these forgotten sanctuaries for decades. The forest canopy that hides them from heritage officials also hides the activities of thieves who can operate for days without being seen, often causing catastrophic damage as they rip artifacts from their context. This creates a heartbreaking paradox where the jungle's protective shroud can also become a shield for those who would erase history for profit. The spiritual significance of these places adds profound weight to their preservation. While Angkor Wat was dedicated to Vishnu, many of these forest-cloaked temples were devoted to lesser-known deities or served as regional monastic complexes. They represent the spiritual life of the provinces, the local expressions of faith that supported the great empire. The carvings that remain, often depicting scenes from daily life or unique interpretations of Hindu and Buddhist mythology, offer irreplaceable insights into the diverse religious landscape of the Khmer world. Losing a statue here is not just losing an artwork, it is losing a unique chapter in a spiritual story. Against these odds, a quiet, heroic effort is underway. Teams of Cambodian archaeologists, often working with international partners and crucially, with the knowledge and cooperation of local communities, are engaged in a desperate campaign of documentation and protection. Their work is a meticulous race against time. Using photogrammetry and three-dimensional scanning, they create digital records of every carving and wall surface, preserving them in a virtual form even if the physical stone is lost. They clear just enough vegetation to assess structural damage and install subtle, non-invasive supports to prevent sudden collapse. Perhaps most importantly, they work to build local guardianship, showing communities how these temples are not just piles of old stone, but a source of cultural pride and, when responsibly managed, sustainable heritage tourism. The fight for these vine-shrouded temples is about more than archaeology. it is a struggle to honor a legacy that exists in a fragile balance between nature and memory. Every root-draped gallery saved, every looted pedestal documented, is a victory in a battle to ensure that the whispers of the provinces are not silenced forever, but continue to speak from the green, tangled heart of the forest. High in the mountains, where the air grows thin and cool, another kind of forest keeps its secrets wrapped in perpetual mist. This is the cloud forest, a world of dripping moss, gnarled trees, and silence so profound you can hear the water condense on a leaf. The constant, gentle precipitation and cool temperatures create an environment where time itself seems to move differently. Organic materials like wood, textiles, and even food offerings, which would vanish in a few years in a lowland rainforest, can be preserved here for centuries, slowly mummifying in the damp chill. Yet this same moisture is a patient sculptor of stone, seeping into microscopic cracks and, through endless freeze-thaw cycles at the highest elevations, slowly crumbling granite and sandstone from within. This delicate balance between preservation and erosion makes the cloud forest a unique and challenging archive. In the misty highlands of Costa Rica, one of the most enduring mysteries emerges from the undergrowth, the Pre-Columbian stone spheres. Ranging from the size of a grapefruit to over 6 feet in diameter and weighing many tons, these perfectly rounded granite orbs have been found scattered in the Diquis Delta region and in foothill forests. Their origin, carved by the ancestors of the Boruca people between 300 and 1500 AD, is clear, but their purpose remains a captivating puzzle. Were they astronomical markers, symbols of status and power, or representations of celestial bodies in a cosmic map? The cloud forest that encroaches upon many of their sites has both hidden and protected them. The dense growth kept them from being systematically looted or removed, while the stable, cool environment prevented the rapid weathering that would have blurred their nearly perfect geometry. Finding one now, half sunk in the mossy soil with a fern growing from its crest, feels like stumbling upon a forgotten artifact from a giant's game. Further south, in the cloud forests of the Peruvian Andes, the archaeological footprint is more architectural but equally subtle. Here, researchers have identified networks of low stone platforms and elongated structures often called ushnas. These were not grand cities, but ceremonial centers and way stations, often located along ancient pilgrimage routes that climb toward sacred mountain peaks or apus. The construction is typically austere, fitted stone walls forming rectangular enclosures, but their setting is everything. Placed on high ridges shrouded in cloud, these platforms were stages for rituals intended to communicate with the mountain deities, to offer prayers for water, fertility, and balance. The forest here does not overwhelm these sites with towering trees. Instead, it carpets them in a thick, spongy layer of moss and bromeliads, softening their edges and weaving them into the tapestry of the mountain itself. To find such a place requires careful surveying, as a ceremonial platform can easily be mistaken for a natural rock outcrop cloaked in green. For the indigenous cultures of these regions, from the Terra in Colombia to the Inca and their predecessors in Peru, the cloud forest was far more than a biome. It was a sacred threshold. Its perpetual mist was seen as the breath of the mountain spirits, a literal bridge between the world of people and the world of the gods. These high forests were places of retreat, vision quests, and communication. The archaeological record they left is intentionally faint: a fire pit on a remote ledge, a broken offering vessel placed in a crevice, a path marked by a cairn of stones. These are not monuments built for the ages in the way of a pyramid. They are ephemeral signatures of transient, profound human experience. Piecing this history together demands immense patience and respect. Archaeologists must work with local communities, whose oral histories often hold the keys to these landscapes, understanding that a pile of stones might mark a place where a shaman once fasted and prayed for the community's well-being. The cloud forest, in its quiet, persistent way, teaches us a different scale of discovery. It guards not the loud proclamations of empire, but the whispered rituals of connection. It preserves the fragile evidence of journeys made for spirit, not for conquest. Each moss-covered sphere, each mist-shrouded platform, is a reminder that human history is written not only in grand capitals, but in the high, quiet places where people sought meaning in the cloud. This leaves us with a haunting question. If such delicate traces of faith and pilgrimage can survive in these dripping groves, what other gentle intimacies of the past are still waiting, unseen, in the world's last pockets of mist? The ghostly lines on the LiDAR screen tell a story of connection. Across the vast Mirador basin, the scans reveal more than the silhouettes of lonely pyramids. They unveil an ancient web. Etched into the digital landscape are the faint, straight ribbons of raised stone causeways, the sacred white roads the Maya called Sakbiob. These are not paths, but monumental engineering projects, highways elevated above the treacherous seasonal swamps and dense undergrowth to link major cities across miles of impassable terrain. This network transforms our understanding from a collection of sites into a single, integrated civilization. One of the most significant nodes in this web is Nakp. Long overshadowed by its colossal neighbor El Mirador, Nakp is now recognized as one of the earliest major centers in the Maya world, a foundational city that pioneered the architectural and social models others would follow. The scale here is staggering, with massive platform constructions and pyramids that required generations of coordinated labor, all built centuries before the classic period flourished. The causeways physically bound Nakp to El Mirador and other centers, proving these were not rival city-states in their early era, but partners in a shared, ambitious project to dominate the landscape. Verifying these laser-mapped features on the ground is a task that demands extraordinary perseverance. The forest here is a different kind of adversary, a low, dense thicket of thorny brush and towering hardwoods known as the patane, where visibility is often limited to a few feet. Archaeologists and their local guides must hack through this relentless vegetation, using GPS coordinates derived from the aerial data, hoping to find the physical proof of a causeway that has been swallowed by roots and soil for over 1,000 years. When they do, the discovery is profound, a validation that the lines on the screen were once walked by processions of traders, pilgrims, and nobles. This interconnected landscape reveals the ultimate truth of the Maya in this region. The jungle we see today is not a pristine wilderness that simply reclaimed abandoned cities. It is growing over what was once a thoroughly managed, anthropogenic environment. The Maya of the Mirador Basin did not just build cities, they engineered an entire ecosystem. They transformed wetlands with canals, managed forest gardens for food and resources, and connected their world with stone highways. The canopy now shrouds a masterpiece of human planning, a coordinated civilization that viewed the forest not as a barrier, but as a canvas to be shaped and connected. The brilliance of the Benin bronzes tells only one side of the story. For centuries, these masterpieces of cast metal defined the world's image of a powerful West African kingdom, but they were created in a capital city protected by an even greater, though far less visible, achievement. Deep within the southern rainforests of what is now Nigeria, the earth itself bears the monumental signature of Benin's ingenuity. This is the domain of the Great Earthworks, a sprawling network of defensive walls and moats often called the Walls of Benin, which wove through the kingdom's forested heartland. To walk through these woods today is to traverse a landscape of gentle, rolling ridges and shallow, overgrown depressions that seem entirely natural. The forest canopy has done its work well, draping these human-made structures in soil, roots, and vines until they blend seamlessly into the terrain. Yet archaeological surveys and historical records reveal the staggering truth hidden beneath the green. This was not a single wall, but a vast, interconnected system of embankments and ditches that encircled communities and linked towns to the capital. In total length, these earthworks are considered one of the largest human-made structures in history, a fact that redefines our understanding of pre-colonial African engineering. Their purpose was profoundly practical. In a region of rival kingdoms and shifting alliances, these ramparts provided formidable defense. The ditches, some reaching depths of over 20 feet, could be flooded to create moats, while the excavated earth was piled into steep inner banks topped with wooden palisades. This created a layered barrier against assault, a clear statement of territorial sovereignty and military readiness, but their function extended far beyond the battlefield. The earthworks served as a powerful administrative tool, clearly delineating the boundaries of settlements and the kingdom's controlled territory. They channeled movement, funneling trade and visitors through designated gates where they could be monitored and taxed. In this way, the walls were both a shield and a sieve, regulating the flow of people, goods, and ideas into the Benin heartland. Perhaps most importantly, they held deep symbolic power. The sheer labor required to construct such a network, using simple tools like digging sticks and baskets to move millions of tons of earth, was a testament to the king's authority and the collective strength of his people. The walls were a physical manifestation of social order and royal power, etched permanently into the land itself. They transformed the wild, untamed rainforest into a domesticated, human-centered landscape of security and hierarchy. The forest that now reclaims these ramparts is the final guardian of this legacy. The same dense growth that once provided raw materials for the kingdom now protects the eroded slopes of its greatest public works project. What appears as a quiet gully was once a bustling checkpoint. What looks like a natural hill was a manned parapet. This gentle concealment asks us to look deeper, to see not just a kingdom of artists, but a kingdom of architects who shaped their world from the ground up. The bronzes speak of courtly ritual and divine kingship, but the silent, overgrown walls tell the parallel story of everyday security, territorial control, and the monumental effort required to build a civilization that could last for centuries in the challenging embrace of the rainforest. The stones of Ciudad Perdida are only the beginning of the story. For the Kogi people, descendants of the Terona, the entire Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta is a living, breathing temple. They call it the heart of the world, a sacred body where every stream is a vein and every mountain peak a point of spiritual energy. Within this living geography, places like Tiuna are not ruins to be excavated, but vital organs to be honored. To walk these paths with a Kogi elder is to see the forest through a different lens. A moss-covered stone circle is not an abandoned foundation. It is a ceremonial altar where offerings of coca leaves and hand-woven threads are still made to maintain the balance of the planet. A narrow, winding trail through the cloud forest is not just a path, but a pilgrimage route walked for centuries to connect with the Aluna, the great spiritual consciousness of the earth. This is a landscape where archaeology and active belief are woven together by the same mist. Beyond the main city, researchers have documented a constellation of smaller, specialized sites scattered across the upper slopes. These are not designed for large populations but for profound purpose. In secluded clearings, often accessible only by following the guidance of indigenous custodians, you find meticulously arranged stone seats facing east toward the sacred peaks. You find carefully constructed offering chambers, small niches built into hillsides where ceramic pots and ritual objects were placed in communication with the ancestors. These are the ritual centers, the quiet chapels of a faith that has never faded. The jungle here is not a passive cloak, it is a revered participant, actively protected by the Kogi as an essential part of their spiritual practice. They see the rampant deforestation of the lowlands as a physical wound to the earth's body, and their sacred sites as points from which to heal it. This creates a powerful model of preservation. At Tayuna and places like it, the forest canopy is maintained not for science alone, but out of deep cultural necessity. The Kogi believe they are the elder brothers, tasked with caring for this heartland to ensure the survival of the entire world, including the younger brothers, which is their term for the rest of humanity. Their guardianship means these sites are shielded from looting and careless tourism by a vigilance born of sacred duty. For archaeologists, this presents a profound partnership. Work here proceeds with permission and deep respect, often revealing that the most significant artifact is not a golden figurine, but the continuity of practice itself. A stone altar may be 1,000 years old, yet the faint traces of recent offerings show it is still understood, still used for its original purpose. This transforms our understanding of what a ruin can be. Tayuna is not a relic of a dead culture, but a living landmark in a continuing story. It challenges the idea that history is something only found in the past. Here, the past is a living dialogue with the present, where the stones are silent teachers and the forest is a sacred text. The Kogi worldview offers a humbling reminder that some discoveries are not about uncovering what was lost, but about listening to what has been faithfully remembered. Their protection of these sites in the cloud forest is a quiet, steadfast act of global stewardship, a testament to the idea that the most important monuments are not those we build for glory, but those we preserve for meaning. These stone walls climb the mountainsides like the steps of a forgotten staircase. Deeper in the Philippine Cordilleras, far from the iconic, living terraces of Banor, lie older, silent counterparts. Their perfect curves, now softened by a thick blanket of moss and feathery ferns, trace the contours of valleys that have not echoed with the sound of harvest in centuries. This is a different kind of monument, one built not for kings or gods, but for survival itself, and its abandonment writes a final, poignant chapter in the story of a landscape. To understand these places is to read a history of movement and adaptation written directly into the earth. The terraces are a map of ancient migration. Researchers believe they were built over 2,000 years ago by some of the earliest Austronesian-speaking peoples to settle these remote highlands. Seeking fertile ground and security, these communities moved inland, away from the coasts and up into the forested mountains. The terraces were their answer to a formidable challenge: how to feed a growing population on steep, erosion-prone slopes. Each leveled field, held back by a meticulously fitted stone wall, was an act of defiance against gravity, a declaration that life would flourish here. The engineering speaks of profound observation and communal genius. The builders crafted intricate irrigation channels that captured spring water from the highest peaks, guiding it down from one terrace to the next in a continuous, life-giving cascade. They selected stones that would fit together tightly without mortar, allowing the walls to flex with the earth during tremors and seasonal shifts. This was not a haphazard construction. It was a calibrated system designed to last for generations, and the forest canopy played a crucial role in its preservation. The dense tree cover above these abandoned systems acted as a natural regulator, its roots stabilizing the soil and its canopy breaking the force of tropical downpours that would have otherwise washed the unprotected earth away. This living blanket protected the delicate soil structure and prevented the stone walls from being buried under landslides, keeping the ancient blueprint intact long after the farmers had moved on. So why were such masterpieces of landscape engineering ultimately left to the wilderness? The reasons are layered, like the terraces themselves. Some areas may have experienced shifts in water sources, making sustained irrigation impossible. In other cases, social changes, such as community consolidation or the allure of new trade opportunities in different valleys, could have led to a gradual migration away from these isolated plots. The decision to leave was likely not sudden, but a slow, practical response to changing circumstances. The land was not defeated, it was respectfully returned. This creates a powerful, visible archaeology of time. In a single valley, you might see the active, vibrant green of terraces still tended by descendants of the original builders, right beside the haunting, beautiful green of the reclaimed ones. The forest did not erase the older works, it incorporated them, creating a living palimpsest where one chapter of human effort is written over another by nature. These silent terraces are not a symbol of failure, but a testament to resilience and adaptation. They show us a people who learn to read a mountain and write their future upon it, and whose legacy is not a single enduring field, but the enduring knowledge of how to live in harmony with a vertical world. Their greatest gift may be the quiet lesson that sometimes the most sustainable act is to let the forest take care of what you have built. The legions of Rome did not stop at open fields and sun-baked hills. Their ambition pushed them into the deep, shadowed forests of the frontier, where the rules of empire were rewritten by the trees. In the province of Dacia, in what is now Romania, the dense woodlands were not a barrier but a territory to be secured. Here, at the edge of the known world, the Romans built fortresses like Poralisum, a major military and civilian hub guarding a vital pass through the Carpathian Mountains. This was no simple camp. It was a complex of stone walls, administrative buildings, temples, and an amphitheater, a full expression of Roman order deliberately planted in wild, contested land. The strategic need was clear: control the high ground and the trade routes, and project power into the territories of communities the Romans called barbarians. To do this, they first had to conquer the forest itself. The signature of Roman engineering in these regions is the road. Before the fortresses rose, teams of soldiers and engineers would cut straight, wide paths through the old growth, laying foundations of gravel and stone to create all-weather highways like the Via Poralicensis. These roads were the arteries of control, allowing rapid movement of troops, supplies, and commerce, effectively taming the wilderness by connecting it to the imperial heart. The forts themselves were masterclasses in adaptation. While stone formed the permanent core, the immediate perimeter and many internal structures relied heavily on timber palisades, wooden barracks, and thatched roofs, materials readily harvested from the surrounding woods. The Roman military became, in these outposts, a hybrid force, employing classic stone masonry alongside local building techniques suited to the environment. When the political winds shifted and the empire eventually withdrew from these distant provinces, a profound transformation began. The roads, without constant maintenance from legionary work details, were the first to fade. Forest soil, leaf litter, and opportunistic undergrowth quickly reclaimed the carefully laid gravel. Saplings took root in the drainage ditches. Within a few human generations, the straight line vanished beneath a curve of roots and moss. The wooden portions of the forts rotted away, leaving only the stone foundations as cryptic outlines. Then, in a patient process witnessed across the globe, the canopy closed in. The great forest, no longer held at bay by axes and patrols, marched back over the clearings. This natural reclamation, however, performed an extraordinary service for history. In open, cultivated landscapes, organic materials like wood, leather, and textiles are quick to decay. But in the stable, moist microclimate under a forest canopy, these fragile artifacts found an unlikely sanctuary. The soil preserved post holes that show the exact footprint of a wooden watchtower. It has safeguarded fragments of military sandals, scabbards, and even wax writing tablets that would have turned to dust on a Mediterranean hillside. This offers a uniquely intimate window into daily life at the empire's edge, telling the stories of individual soldiers far from home through the personal items they left behind. These forest-swallowed outposts provide a humbling correction to the marble and monument narrative of Rome. They reveal an empire that was, at its frontiers, flexible and pragmatic, learning to build and survive in ecosystems utterly foreign to its Italian core. Their disappearance is not a story of defeat, but one of transition. When the political will to maintain that distant presence faded, nature simply resumed its course. The forest did not destroy pluralism, it gently archived it, preserving a chapter of Roman history that is less about glorious conquest and more about the gritty, daily reality of holding a line in the green, silent dark. This hidden legacy reminds us that even the most formidable human systems are temporary arrangements, and that the natural world holds a long, patient memory of our passing ambitions. From the cockpit of a small plane, the Amazon appears as an endless, undulating green ocean. Yet every so often, a pilot flying over the remote highlands of the Guiana Shield will spot something that breaks the pattern. A perfect circle, a straight line, a series of unnaturally geometric mounds etched into the forest floor far below. These are not the whims of nature, but the ghostly signatures of a lost world. Across an immense region spanning parts of Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and Brazil, the rainforest hides one of the continent's most enigmatic archaeological mysteries, a sprawling collection of earthworks and stone platforms that have barely been touched by modern science. Satellite imagery has since confirmed what those pilots glimpsed, revealing hundreds of these formations scattered across a wilderness so vast and inaccessible, it remains one of the planet's last blank spaces. To reach a site like those along the Paracatu River is a monumental undertaking in itself. It requires days of travel by boat up rushing, rock-strewn rivers, followed by a grueling trek through some of the densest jungle on Earth, where every foot of progress is contested by thorns, mud, and a suffocating canopy. This extreme isolation has acted as the ultimate guardian. While other ruins have been mapped, looted, or studied, these platform complexes exist in a state of suspended animation, waiting in the green dark. What little we know comes from a handful of courageous expeditions. On the ground, researchers have documented meticulously constructed raised mounds, often arranged in circular or rectangular patterns. They have found causeways, elevated pathways connecting these mounds across the soggy forest floor, and enigmatic rock art pecked into granite outcrops, depicting spirals, human figures, and celestial patterns. The scale is not of a city in the traditional sense, but of a ceremonial landscape, a sacred geometry imposed upon the wilderness. The absence of widespread excavation means the identity of the builders is still woven from threads of theory and oral history. Leading researchers suggest a connection to the ancestors of contemporary Carib and Arawak peoples, groups whose deep historical knowledge of these forests stretches back millennia. The purpose of these sites is a captivating puzzle. The alignment of some mounds and causeways with solstice sunrises or certain stars points to a possible astronomical function, a celestial calendar carved into the earth. Other arrangements suggest they were spaces for communal gatherings, ritual performances, or as territorial markers for a society that moved through the forest with seasonal rhythms. Each platform, each cleared circle, speaks of a society that did not merely survive in this challenging environment, but sought to understand and codify it, to create points of meaning and connection within the overwhelming green. This makes the Guiana Shield perhaps the last great frontier of terrestrial archaeology. Here, the textbook is not being revised, it is being written for the first time. Every successful expedition that returns from those river basins carries the potential to upend our narratives about pre-Columbian South America. The forest holds these secrets close, not out of malice, but because it has simply outlasted the memory of those who built there. In that silence, there is a thrilling promise, a reminder that our planet still keeps a few profound mysteries in reserve, places where discovery is not about digging up the past, but about learning to see the patterns it left on the land, waiting for someone to finally read them. The dry forests of northern Peru hold a different kind of secret, one of gleaming gold and silent guardians. In the 1980s, police investigating reports of looting near the town of Sepon made a startling discovery. Beneath a heavily damaged adobe platform, they found an intact burial chamber. This was the tomb of a Moch lord, and it was a revelation. The wealth and artistry unearthed there, including exquisite gold and silver ornaments, intricate textiles, and ceremonial regalia, made it one of the richest archaeological finds ever in the Americas. But the true story of its preservation is written not just in metal, but in the trees that grew above it. The Moch, who flourished from about 100 to 800 AD, were master builders of monumental huacas, great pyramids of sun-dried mud brick. While many of their most famous structures rise from stark coastal deserts, others were constructed in river valleys that were far greener in their time. As the Moch civilization eventually declined, these valleys underwent a slow transformation. The irrigation canals that fed their fields fell into disuse, and the land began to dry. But a resilient, dry forest ecosystem moved in, dominated by the hardy algarobo tree. These trees, with their deep roots and spreading canopies, began a quiet, centuries-long vigil over the abandoned pyramids. This sparse forest canopy performed a crucial protective role. In the open desert, the relentless sun and the rare but torrential rains are devastating to adobe structures, melting them back into the earth from which they came. The algarobo forest interrupted that process. Its dappled shade reduced the extreme temperature fluctuations that cause mud brick to crack and crumble. The network of roots helped stabilize the steep sides of the platforms, binding the soil and preventing catastrophic erosion from wind and water. Furthermore, this dry forest created a subtle camouflage. To the eyes of potential looters over the centuries, a forested mound looked more like a natural hill than a promising pyramid. While more exposed and obvious huacas were systematically ravaged, tombs like the Lord of Sepon's, sheltered beneath this greenish-brown veil, were overlooked. The microclimate beneath this canopy became a perfect niche for preservation. The dry forest environment maintained a remarkably stable balance of humidity and temperature. This prevented the rapid decay of organic materials that would have been inevitable in a wet jungle or a brutally arid desert. Inside the sealed tombs, this meant that fragile treasures survived in stunning detail. Elaborate textiles woven with complex patterns, feathered headdresses that still held their color, and even the remains of funerary offerings like food and wooden objects were preserved alongside the iconic gold and silver. This allowed archaeologists to recover not just objects but an entire context. They could see how a lord was dressed for his journey, what symbols of power he carried, and how his companions and guardians were arranged around him. Each tomb became a frozen moment in time, a detailed record of Moch royalty, artistry, and spiritual belief that had been safeguarded for over 1,000 years by an unassuming forest. The algarobo trees did not build this civilization, but they became its most faithful archivists. They teach us that preservation is not always an active human act. Sometimes it is a passive gift from an environment that simply continues its own slow life, sheltering the past beneath its branches until we are finally ready to learn from it. A strangler fig's root slowly, inexorably, splits a 1,000-year-old temple wall. This is not destruction in the violent sense, but a patient, inevitable transformation. The forest canopy is far more than a hiding place. It is an active curator of these ruins, a living force that shapes the final chapters of a civilization's story. By studying the common threads woven through these 24 lost worlds, we begin to hear a conversation across time, a dialogue about why great societies falter and what remains when they do. The stones themselves point to recurring patterns. At El Mirador and Caracol, we see evidence of societies that achieved astonishing scale, but whose very success may have strained the delicate rainforest ecology that supported them. Intensive agriculture, while ingenious, can alter water tables and deplete soils over centuries. a slow burn that undermines the foundation of a city. Climate shifts documented in ice cores and sediment layers often coincide with periods of abandonment. A prolonged drought for the Maya or a shift in monsoon patterns for the Khmer could turn a managed landscape into a fragile one, pushing a complex society past a point of no return. Historians like Joseph Tainter offer a compelling lens, suggesting that as societies grow more complex to solve problems, they eventually reach a point of diminishing returns. The energy and resources needed to maintain the system, whether it's the vast road network of the Romans or the ceremonial upkeep of Madol, can become too great a burden. Then political fragmentation often follows. The unity that built the great walls of Benin or the causeways of the Mirador basin can fracture into competing factions, turning cooperation into conflict and leaving the monumental infrastructure to decay. And as we saw with the Terra at Ciudad Perdida, invisible forces like introduced illness could travel ahead of any army, causing catastrophic loss that unravels social bonds and makes sustaining a grand urban experiment impossible. These are not tales of sudden, dramatic doom, but of slow unraveling, a series of intertwined pressures that eventually cause a society to contract, to simplify, or to disperse back into the landscape from which it came. The forest, in its patient reclamation, becomes the final act in this process. It does not judge the collapse, it simply documents it through the gentle, relentless work of roots and rain. This makes each vine-draped wall a profound teacher. The ruins beneath the canopy are overwhelmingly from societies that, in their brilliance, pushed their relationship with the environment to its limit. Their silent stones speak directly to our own moment, asking urgent questions about sustainability, resilience, and the true cost of complexity. They remind us that civilizations are not permanent, but are dynamic agreements between people and their planet, agreements that require constant, mindful renewal. To walk through these green-shrouded plazas is to engage in the most vital kind of time travel, not to escape our present, but to understand it more clearly, listening for the echoes of choices made long ago that still resonate in the rustling leaves above. Our final discovery is not a place but a promise. The same LiDAR technology that revealed Angkor's true scale and the lost city of the Jaguar is now just one tool in a rapidly expanding kit. Ground-penetrating radar can map buried foundations and artifacts without moving a single stone, sending pulses into the earth to create a sonogram of the past. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is being trained to scan petabytes of satellite imagery, learning to spot the subtle, telltale signatures of human settlement, a slight discoloration in vegetation, a micro-topography of ridges and mounds that even the sharpest human eye would miss. We are entering a golden age of seeing through the veil, where entire lost landscapes are being digitally resurrected before a single researcher sets foot in the jungle. This technological leap means the next decade will likely unveil more forgotten cities than the past century combined, rewriting our maps of human history in real time. Yet with this unprecedented power comes a profound and urgent responsibility. The ethical questions are as complex as the root systems that guard these sites. For many of these ruins, from the cloud forests of Peru to the highlands of the Philippines, they are not abandoned to the indigenous communities who live nearby. They are ancestral homes, sacred geographies, and active parts of a living cultural memory. The moment a site is pinpointed from space, its fate hangs in a delicate balance. Announce its location publicly, and you risk a stampede not just of academics, but of looters armed with metal detectors and shovels, drawn by the lucrative black market in antiquities. A tomb that survived for 1,000 years can be stripped bare in a single night, its artifacts scattered and its context, which is the true source of its story, destroyed forever. This forces a difficult conversation about guardianship. Do we rush in to excavate, to extract knowledge and objects for museums and study? Or do we, in some cases, let the forest continue its patient work of preservation, documenting remotely and sharing stewardship with the descendant communities who have protected these places through memory and tradition? There is no single answer, but a new paradigm is emerging. Leading archaeologists now prioritize collaboration, working with indigenous groups not as subjects, but as essential partners and knowledge holders. Projects are designed to build local capacity, creating guardianship programs that protect sites as sources of cultural pride and sustainable heritage. The goal is shifting from mere extraction to mutual understanding, ensuring that the process of discovery heals rather than harms. The next wave of finds will test our wisdom as much as our technology. They will ask us what these ruins are truly for. Are they puzzles for us to solve, or are they legacies for us to honor? The silent stones and the embracing canopy offer a shared lesson that the greatest discovery is not uncovering what was lost, but learning how to care for what we have found. From the vine-choked pyramids of Cambodia to the geometric earthworks of the Amazon, our journey has revealed a planet far richer in history than we ever imagined. These 25 monumental ruins are not mere curiosities. They are profound testaments to the incredible breadth of human ingenuity and ambition. They show us societies that reached for the sky with stone, that charted the stars with earth, and that forged sustainable worlds within the most challenging environments on Earth. Each discovery beneath the canopy rewrites a chapter, proving that our historical narrative has been, for too long, incomplete. We have been reading only the last few pages of a much longer, more complex story. These lost cities remind us of a fundamental truth: civilizations are not permanent monuments. They are dynamic processes. They rise, they adapt to their environment, they sometimes overreach, and they often fade, transitioning their energy back into the land. The forest does not simply hide these stories, it becomes the final, patient archivist, inscribing the epilogue in roots and moss. As our technology, from LiDAR to artificial intelligence, pulls back the green veil with increasing precision, we gain something more valuable than just knowledge of the past. We gain perspective. We see patterns of resilience and fragility, of innovation and its limits. The silent stones of Caracol and the overgrown causeways of the Mirador basin speak directly to our own global moment, asking us how we will balance ambition with sustainability and how we will write the next chapter of our own civilization story. The next great discovery might be just a laser scan away, waiting in an uncharted valley or a forgotten mountain range. What we choose to do with that discovery, how we honor its legacy and learn from its lessons, will define our own legacy. If this exploration into history's hidden corners has captivated you, there are always more mysteries waiting. Consider subscribing to continue the journey and share in the comments below which lost city from this tapestry of 25 you find most compelling and why. Your perspective adds another voice to this ongoing global conversation.